another week here in Seattle. You couldn't ask for better weather. Hot, relaxing, beautiful water, and oh yeah, the Seattle Seahawks are at training camp. 2014 NFL season has begun. Welcome 12s, 12th man, 12th lady, and Hawks Nation around the world. This is your show, 12 for 12s. The show for the 12th man, by a 12th man. That's me, Paul Beyer. I am extremely excited to be with you tonight. I think just this whole renewing of the fact the season has really begun, the fact that we're really here, the 2014 NFL campaign is upon us. Wow, the energy everywhere around this town, down at the VMAC, the fans, the players, you can see it all. It's all out in front of us. It's time to go to work. So how's life out there, all you Seahawks fans? Are the withdrawals, hopefully, are you feeling better? You're not suffering from those withdrawals anymore? I can tell you I am. Personally, I've never felt better. The NFL and our Hawks are back. I mean, this is it. We're here. It's begun. The defense of the campaign, the defensive campaign has begun. In 9 short days, the preseason will kick off with the Super Bowl rematch. Again, we call it a Super Bowl rematch against the Denver Broncos. I expect Agent Orange to be fully infecting in that Denver crowd. They're going to be looking for some type of revenge, obviously. But wake up call, folks. This game is meaningless. We won't exceed most of our players out there for more than 1 or 2 series. It'll be really all about the backups. Still, we'll probably manhandle them with our 2s and our 3s. We all know that. That's where the Seahawks dominate. That's where the Seahawks dominate on special teams. That's why we're as good as we are. We create great players. There's a lineage there, folks. 5 days of training camp for now are in the books. Still, no Marshawn Lynch sighting at the VMAC. I think most people expected there to be something today, but no, there has yet to be a sighting. I don't expect this really to continue much longer, but I'm also, at the same time, prepared to move on. As much as it kills me, I think I'm finally ready, and we'll talk more on this later. But Marshawn Lynch holdout still is continuing. Got another big show for all of you tonight, the 12th man, 12th lady, all of you out there, Hawks Nation. First, in just a few minutes, I'll be joined by Eric Keith of the band One. That's the number 1, O-N-E, one spelled out. This is pronounced as One. They have put together some great Hawks anthems along with some of their other music projects. But the most recent Hawks anthem, All In, We the Loudest, we'll be playing that here as Eric comes on. I'm looking forward to that. I think it's great, all the 12s, the amount of work people do and put in, the talented artists. There's a lot of you out there. And I think you just put together some great work, and I want to highlight that on this show. Also, at the bottom of the hour, closer to around 7:30 here, Pacific Standard Time, I'll be talking with Darin Pike, regional Seahawk NFL pundit from 12th Man Musing, gentleman who was on the show earlier this year in the off season, and we had discussed the some ends that he had, and I think it's very important. I think Darin's very knowledgeable. He's a guy that's been around the block. He had insight on the Jared Allen situation, and he really broke that stuff here locally, so I'm excited to talk to him more in detail about where the Seahawks are in this camp. There's so much to talk about, some good, some bad, but, we got to start off with those quick takes, and there's more than I had even expected when I was writing the show earlier. So let's get right to it, quick takes-wise. Still no word on Marshawn Lynch, but I will say this before Darin and I talk about it a little bit later. Mama Lynch made a clear statement on her Facebook today that she's coming back to Seattle. And I think that might be an indication this holdout's about to end. So I'll leave it at that, but just my initial thought when I saw that was I think this is going to end pretty soon. Bad news for the tight end position group, and really horrible news for a guy I expected to see a lot of good things this year from, Anthony McCoy, who tore his Achilles tendon last year in minicamp, tore his other leg's Achilles tendon, and it's just a tragedy. Honestly, we don't know, again, the severity, but anytime you're dealing with an Achilles tendon, it's usually pretty much a lost season. It's not, again, confirmed, but I'll just say this is just too bad. A USC guy, Pete Carroll, was very familiar with. He's had 3 seasons here. He's only played 1 of them healthy, obviously his first year. And, again, a guy who I expected to see some great things from, really moving forward. Extremely athletic, big body, very much like a Zach Miller, but younger and a little bit more athletic, I'd say. Not taking too much away from Zach, but, again, we'll get to this a little later, but I think this is a sad thing for them to see. I saw it live on the ESPN coverage, and that gets us into ESPN. ESPN spent the day at training camp, a live feed of practice, different camera angles, getting in and out of drills. They had the whole, schedule of what was taking place. It was really interesting, fun to watch. The cameras in the huddles, the mics on the players and coaches, it was just really cool. And to get this type of insight, especially for someone like myself, I couldn't ask for a better scenario in trying to understand what's happening on the field. I could even say it's better than actually being just sitting there watching it, because you really were finding out what was going on. You saw breakdowns of the drills, what they were working on, just really well done. And I actually DVR'd it. And if you didn't DVR it this morning, I expect ESPN will be replaying it. So get that. Make sure you do record this. I'm going to watch it again back after this show. So really something special. There have been some player moves, and I think more player moves than I really had anticipated these last few days, mostly with JAGS, which I'll explain later what JAGS stands for. But there was really one move today that I think is summing up some issues, potential issues, and that is that right tackle Eric Winston from the Cardinals, free agent, 8-year veteran, was picked up by the Hawks today, with Michael Bailey being injured still, and Justin Britt, who's been working and taking all the first-team reps, having some issues with some of his pass blocking. I thought it was interesting to see Eric Winston picked up today, kind of the most telling move of them so far, and I'll talk a little bit about those again in the future on the show here. But when we get into the Hawks 12, I know we're going to talk about potential players and who's going to be kept at different position groups, especially when Darin and I get into it. But again, this is just kind of an interesting one to see. This guy's been around. He actually is the one that got blown up last year down in Arizona during the game with the Cardinals. Cam Chancellor, it's a very famous play in that game where he just blew up a tackle, lifted him off the ground, put him on his back, and that was Eric Winston. Now, he is a guy who's pretty good. He's had some good times, some bad times. He's been around a little bit, but he is very well thought of. He's actually the president of the Players Association from the standpoint of those actual still playing. So he's kind of an interesting character and very, very, very well spoken. He actually did an interview today after practice, and you can catch that on Seahawks.com. Bobby Wagner left camp today, had a little tightness in his hamstring. Brock Coyle, the undrafted free agent out of Montana, came in, and he did actually a fantastic job in his stead. There's another guy, just, you see these guys that John Schneider and Pete Carroll find, and here's another guy who might have a chance of making this team as a linebacker. So Brock Coyle, remember that name. Also, Broncos, Kevin Vickers seems to think the Hawks are really bad sports. He didn't play in the Super Bowl due to injury, but he thought the trash talk that we had was over the top. Maybe you should remind Wes Welker. That's my message to Mr. Vickers. Look, they got their butts kicked. You weren't even on the field, Kevin. Stop with this bully talk and trying to get revenge. preseason. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's a new time, new season, new players. Step up. This isn't Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin. You're not going to bully us. And be a man about it. Do it on the field. We'll see what happens when you face our guys. And if you're so tough, which you obviously weren't tough enough to play in the Super Bowl, but we'll see what happens. Our boys will be ready for you. Finally, build the tip. Again, last show I had Chris Bauer and Joe Michaels, the originators of this initiative, which I think is just super exciting and super great. The bronze statue likeness of Richard Sherman and that famous play from the NFC Championship against the San Francisco 49ers and making that tip to Malcolm Smith for the interception that sealed the victory. The campaign has gone live. It's on Indiegogo, so please check it out. Give starting at $12. I mean, why wouldn't you want to at least give $12? And remember, 12 pledges of those people that have given money to this campaign, 12 of you will be selected to be, and this will be a random draw, of course, to have your names on the statue. So how much cooler can it get? Do get in on that. Again, that's the Build the Tip, buildthetip.com, and you'll go right to Indiegogo. And again, 39 days left in the campaign, a lot of time, but they're already over 20,000. So I expect this to get up there as soon as the real big sponsors come in, the corporate ones and whatnot, and this is going to happen. $250,000 is what they need to build the statue. This is, again, something that I think Seattle deserves, but I think it needs something to look and see when they look back and look at what we've accomplished so far. Again, some people think it's too early. I'm telling you, it's not. That's a play that is going to live in infamy, so make it happen. All right, I'm going to take a quick commercial break before I come back and do the opening commentary. But, again, just a word from our sponsor here, Sam's Tavern. Heading downtown to watch a Mariners game or just meet up with some friends, well, think about hitting Sam's Tavern on 1st and Pike in Pike Place. The home of the Red Robin Hamburger, great eats, good beer, awesome people. Take a load off and enjoy your time at Sam's Tavern. You'll be glad you did. Check out the Bloody Mary Bacon Masterpiece, a burger and a Bloody Mary. Burger on top attached to a Bloody Mary. I'm not sure it can get much better than that. And go ahead and get it. I definitely will. Can't get much better than that, folks. Go to Sam's Tavern down on Pike Place. Enjoy it. Great place to be during Mariners time and obviously Seahawks coming up. All right, I'm going to get to my opening commentary here. Before I do that, I just thought there might be some music that should be played with this. What do you do when a long-lost love finally comes back into your life? Well, I had my answer Friday. I've never felt so happy and energized to be back at the daily grind of reporting on our Seahawks Daily. Personally, my schedule has been filled to the brim with updates, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website.
All day I've been thinking about you, baby, my one desire. Gonna wrap my arms around you and hold you close to me. Oh, baby, I wanna taste your lips, I wanna be your fantasy, yeah.
The energy has been tremendous so far. The fans look like bloodthirsty bunch of wolves that sold out practice sessions.
Without you, baby, don't know where I'd be. You're not just another lover, no, you're everything to me. Every time I'm with you, baby, I can't believe it's true. When you lay in my arms, you do the things you do. You can see it in my eyes, I can feel it in your touch.
From the Seahawk chant to just the vision I see at the clink in a few short weeks, I can tell the 12s are ready to go. The pumps have been primed. The vocal cords are rested. Football's back.
Over again. I wanna kiss you all over. Till the night closes in. Till the night closes in.
night is closing in. My gosh, I can't wait. The coverage today by ESPN was a football nerd's dream. I thoroughly enjoyed it. John Gruden was out there like a kid in a candy store. Darren Woodson could not stop talking about how good our defense is. Kenny Mayne was in his element, even allowing his daughter to do some player interviews. Even though we don't get hard knocks, today was about as good as it gets. You really felt like you understood the practice intensity the Seahawks play with and practice with on a really daily basis, not only mini camp but also during the season. They jump from drill to drill, always on a hop. Pete Carroll was had his head in every huddle. He's picking guys up, never jumping on their backs. The film never lies, and there's always time for that. In fact, they kept score today, and it was so cool to watch how they do what they do. You wonder, how's it all quantified? Offense against defense in practice. Well, Pete's got his way, as we know. I just loved it. I plan to watch it again, especially after the show. The Seahawks are back. My true love has come back through the door. It feels like a million years, but it's okay. I'm back in place. I belong. The journey back to the top has begun. How can you not be excited? Well, buckle up, 12. The hour's about to strike 12. And it has begun. I hope you enjoyed that, unique commentary today. It was something a little different, something new I wanted to try with music playing in the background as I kind of did my own, not singing, but soliloquy. I am excited to bring on my guest here in just a minute, so I'm going to take a quick break. Again, this is 12 for 12's, your show for the 12th man, Hawks Nation, 12th man, 12th lady, all over the place. I'm very much excited to talk to you tonight. I am going to be joined here shortly by Eric Keith of One, talk about some of their great music projects, including their most recent Seahawks Anthem. Wow, folks, we're back. It's it, season 2014. So, again, this is Paul Beyer, 12 for 12's. We are going to take a quick break and be right back. First, a announcement from one of our sponsors, Stickers Northwest.
Hello, this is Paul from Double Overtime and the 12 for 12's radio show. I am proud to announce one of our sponsors, www.stickersnorthwest.com. Don't forget the www. All of us here at Double Overtime Radio are proud to announce our latest sponsor, www.stickersnorthwest.com. Creating some of the stickiest Seahawks, 12s, Mariners, Husky original designs to share with your friends or just your favorite book or folder. Some of the coolest local flair options you can find. Check out www.stickersnorthwest.com and make your purchase today. Don't forget to use promo code PAUL2OT and receive 20% off your next purchase. Do it today. You'll be sticky for sure. Again, that's www.stickersnorthwest.com. Remember to spell Stickers Northwest out. And also, when you use the promo code, it's PAUL2OT. Now back to the program.
mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in. Come on, we all in. We all in. We all in. We all in. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in. We loudest. We loudest. We loudest. Our stadium's the most proud, and we the loudest. We loudest. We loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We're my lady 12s, yeah, we known to get it crackin'. Messing up the heads, guard your brain to get a fracture. Feel like what happened, each opposing fan demand an answer. Out Seattle gets so loud. The 12th man is madness. Known for the passion, lights, camera, action. Rain, hail, sleet, know the 12's gon' be standing. Crossing the chasm, 12's are bragging everywhere across the planet. It don't matter what city we land in. Interviewers get distracted by the amount of attention that we drawing after. It's a new chapter, you can doubt if you want. Bet that doubt is a chip that only makes us louder. Yeah, we make noise in the stand, shouting we the loudest. Turned up to the max, so you know we bout it. Bout it, no limits, we get rowdy. My team's rising up to the challenge, but your team is loud.
We loudest, we loudest, we loudest, we loudest. Our stadium's the most proud, and we the loudest. We loudest, we loudest, we loudest.
That is the single Seahawks Anthem, All In, We the Loudest by Eric Keith of One, and just one part of One. And I'm now joined by Eric. Eric, how are you doing tonight on 12 for 12's radio?
I'm doing very good, man. Appreciate you having me on the phone to talk about the new anthem that we got out.
Hey, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to play it on a show that's just for the 12s and Seahawks Nation out there. So thank you. I guess first place to start tonight, and we'll play the song a little later when you're kind of wrapping up. But why don't you first of all, for those that don't know who you are, haven't heard of your music before, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and your music and fandom for the Seahawks?
Yeah, no problem. My name's Eric Keith. I'm one half of One. The other half is LaTanya, which is actually my wife. We've been married for 11 years. We've been doing music together for roughly 10. And, I mean, you can go check us out at onemusic.com. It's spelled the number 1, O-N-E, music.com. We've been doing a lot of stuff lately. We're actually Christian hip-hop artists. A lot of people don't know that. We've been doing it for a long time now. Last year, me and a buddy of mine did a song called, I don't know if you heard of it or not, but it's Better, the Better Seahawks Anthem. We did that anthem, and it ended up taking off. And, that song was purely about the Seahawks. And this one actually we wrote with this pure intention of it being specifically for the 12th man. So it's like, you listen to it, I don't even mention the Seahawks. It was like, it's all about the 12. I figured, we are such a big entity right now. Sports announcers everywhere. Anybody, when they mention the Seahawks, they mention 12th man, they call us by our name. They don't say Seahawks fans. They say the 12th man. And I said, you know what? We're just as big. We need an anthem to represent us, too. And that's how, All In was birthed.
So Eric, tell me this. I think this is interesting because some people aren't as creative, especially when it comes to making or creating music. You're not only a Seahawk fan, but you're obviously a musician. And when you're trying to put something like this together, I'm fascinated, and if you don't mind sharing, how does the inspiration come to you, and then how do you turn that into an actual project?
Well, it's interesting you say that because sometimes it doesn't always come, But I've been, happy and blessed that these ones actually just came right out. I had a specific, thing I wanted to talk about, and the inspiration really just comes from being a fan. And of being a fan for so long, so much, especially when we did the Better song. I knew a lot already about the players. And it just comes with being a songwriter, It doesn't happen overnight. With us, there's a long process. We make rough drafts. We perfect it. I can take this out and make it a little, flow a little bit better. The thing that we always want to keep in mind is make sure that it's sonically sound, and that it's not jumbled up or thrown together real quick. We take our time, and we go to once it's ready and we have it actually memorized, we go and record it at a professional recording studio, get it mixed and mastered, and then we're ready to push it. And then there's so much that goes into it. It's not as easy. I mean, not anybody can just write a Seahawks song. People do, but that doesn't mean that it's great. not trying to pump minds up,
Oh, sure.
But you know what I'm saying? It's just there's time that's involved. Yeah, it's really hard to say where my inspiration comes from. Besides being a fan, a pure fan. Been a fan for a long time. In our down seasons, like when it's funny. I tell people this. I became a diehard fan in the Jim Moore era, and everybody looks at me like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, yeah, that was our worst season in my time. I'm a young guy, so the worst season that I've seen was back when Jim Moore was running that 1 year. But I became a diehard fan, and it's like I love my city, I love my town, I love my Seahawks, and don't let you start talking any mess about my Seahawks, and then a fight will start. Not physical, but I've been known to get real loud when defending my Seahawks.
So Eric, let's talk some football just for a second. We'll skip away from the music for 1 minute, and if you don't mind, I'd love to get your expectations. Obviously, coming off a Super Bowl win, first one in franchise history. I think one of many we expect with this unit, as young as they are. What are your expectations for this 2014 season?
Well, I'm gonna say this: the preseason game that we played against Denver, I told everybody if it was going to be Seattle and Denver in the Super Bowl, and nobody believed me until it came time to the Super Bowl, and I was like, see, nobody wanted to listen to me. So I'm gonna say it again. My expectations is for us to be down in Arizona playing Denver again. I think it's going to be a double repeat.
I love it. I love it. So
Seahawks coming out on top. I mean, it is. We have so many things in place. Our depth is so deep, and we have such young talent. I can't tell you how much I've been jonesing for not just football, but to see my Seahawks play again, like preseason. I'm all over it. I'm like, man, one of the games is actually on my birthday, and a buddy of mine gave me a ticket for my birthday, so we're going to the preseason game.
Oh, there you go.
And it's I view preseason just as big as games, and a lot of people downplay it, but I'm like, they're very important, and you have no idea how important preseason is. And I have a strong feeling that our record is going to be 14-2. We're going to improve on what we did last year.
Tough
very
schedule
tough,
this
and
year.
I was very upset at the way they did it, because it's almost like they were trying to set us up to fail.
Well,
I'm like, how are you going to play 4 division games almost back to back in the end of the season? And then when I found out the week 4 bye, I was very upset too. But I have every faith in my guys. They're ready. They're not going to let anything come in their way of getting a ring again. They're still hungry.
They're focused more so, almost coming off of the win than they were last year. It's just it's more in the media's eye, and people are talking about it. Well, before you go, unfortunately, I gotta sign off with you, Eric, because I got my next guest coming on. But if you don't mind, share again with the audience how they can follow not only yourself but your music and where they can find it.
Well, they can find everything. We have everything centrally located. All of our events that we're going to be performing at coming up, our Twitter feeds, Facebook page, everything is centrally located on our website, and that's onemusic.com. That's the number 1, ONE, music.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at I am Eric Keith, at Latanya206, and at We Are One. that's how you guys can follow us. I really appreciate the opportunity also for having me on here.
Oh, no problem. I actually found your YouTube page as well, Eric Keith. It's under Eric Keith, and it's easy to find, and all your videos and music can be found there as well. So I'll make sure I get that up all on the website for you, Eric, and really thank you so much for coming on real short. I know you're at a football practice, but hey, have a great rest of the summer, and, hey, preseason started. 2014's here. Go Hawks, right?
Go Hawks.
All right. Take care, Eric. We'll get you on soon again, and I'll play your music for you. All right, buddy?
Hey, man, really appreciate it.
You bet. Take care. All right. I am going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back with my next guest, Darin Pike. Again, very excited to talk to Darin. We're going to discuss most of the Hawks 12 this evening together, bouncing back and forth. Again, this is just one of those things, folks. The season has started. 2014 is underway. We're going to talk a lot about it, and we're going to hopefully get knee-deep so you know what to expect and what to read from these past few days going into the second week already of training camp, just in a couple of more days. So here, we'll be right back. And again, this is 12 for 12 with your host, Paul Beyer. Thank you so much for listening.
We loudest. Our stadium's the most crowded. We loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm a 212, bleeding blue and green. Come get your eardrums beat up on us, guaranteed. Hearing instrumentally, it is a fair scene. Fair weather's never better. Residents of the hearing seat. Adults, some can disagree. Stuck in disbelief. You mess with 112, you messing with the whole family tree. These other teams will stand a chance for Bentley. We operate off facts, know what a player thinks. Sticking together pound for pound, so we don't give up. Losing, winning, true sportsmanship, we always showing love. Never going out without a fight when we throw them gloves. Safe to say we shut them down till it's over, bruh. That's a big low. Painted hard kid and ball the seat pimp. Mama blue, Mr. Mohawk. I know you see the rooster. Mr. Seahawk, I got you. We the loudest, raise the roof up. We loudest. Our stadium's the most crowded. We loudest. We loudest. Current record holders, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yo, 12 man, let them know that we the Super Bowl champs. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in. Come on, we all in. We all in. Tell your mama, tell a stranger, bring a friend. Everybody yell out, we all in.
That is All In, We the Loudest, from Eric Keith, who just joined the show, 12 for 12 Radio. Really appreciate Eric coming on. And again, do follow all their work on the number one, and then one spelled out, ONEmusic.com. I'll have links to all of that on my website, 12for12.com. But again, I just think it's awesome, the originality of our fans and what they're able to create, again, musically. Just another thing that shows you we're special. All right, I am now joined on the big program here by a good friend, a fellow pundit, regional. This guy's been doing it longer than I have, though. Darin Pike, I think you're over in Spokane right now. It's got to be hot. How are you doing this evening, Darin?
Doing good, Paul. How about you?
I'm doing all right. It's hot and heavy. Everything's coming at us. I mean, we've been waiting, for a few months now. I think it was 135 days I counted out, and now we're here. The season, the campaign has begun, and now we're trying to read into every little tiny thing. So I'm excited for you joining me tonight so we can get back into this and talk some football. But before we get into it knee deep, why don't you go ahead and tell the 12s what you've been up to lately? I'm actually interested to find out when your next articles are going to come out and when we can hear more from you.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's good to touch base with you again. Taking a little step back from some of the writing over the off season, gets a little interesting trying to break apart little pieces of almost meaningless information versus when the season starts. But the creatives have been working on the site fanjabs.com, making some tweaks there, but we're ramping back up as the season's getting going here. Just been focused on a few other projects, spent a little bit of time with the family over the summer, and still trying to work out my little health issue here. So if you hear me stumbling on words a little bit today, please forgive me. But,
well, the heat can get to everybody, right?
Well, the heat makes it worse, yeah.
Well, let's get into this. I'd love to, first things first, just get your initial reactions to the first few days of camp. Some of the points that you think stand out above others.
I think my first thought is wow. I don't know how you get better than we were last year, but what I'm seeing so far in camp, it's looking like Pete and John have managed to do just that. Looking at a fun season coming up, and I don't think September 4th can get here fast enough for any of us. But looking around some of the things that a Seahawks fan has to love, it's hard to ignore the tempo of the practices. Coming back off the Super Bowl win, you wonder what that intensity level is going to be like, if it's going to be the same, if it's going to take a step back. But they're certainly running every bit as fast as they were last year, and if not faster in some cases. I think a big part of that is this roster has become so thick and so deep, and it'll be so difficult for a lot of these players to crack that they know they have to be giving out maximum effort on every single opportunity they have to impress the coaches. So I think that's going to make for a very fun and interesting training camp. Also, can't ignore the fact that Pete and John aren't done trying to improve the roster. And when you look at the depth that they already have, making the signings like Terrell Thomas and Eric Winston just show that, they're not going to be complacent. So I know last time you and I spoke, Eric Winston's one of the guys I mentioned that I wouldn't be surprised if they made a hard run at. He was one of the, the top 10 free agents that I started talking about back in, February and March that made a lot of sense for Seattle. So I was very excited to see that signing. I know he had a little issue last year against Cam, but fortunately there's not another player out in the NFL like that he has to worry about in 2014. So I think Cable's blocking system will be a good fit for Winston. So it'll be exciting to see. He brings leadership. He's a very well-respected man around the NFL. He'll be a great presence in that locker room. So I think he's going to have a nice impact on the team, either as depth or as possibly a starter.
And I think that kind of, falls into the big topic that I know we wanted to save till this moment, which is, where's Marshawn? What's going on with Marshawn Lynch? And I know everyone's got a different perspective on this. I have my own, but why don't we start with, what's your read on this whole holdout business?
Well, I don't want to, upset Sunshine Lynch. I know she's been going through enough the last few days, and won't try to pile onto that. And what it comes down to me is I respect Lynch and what he's attempting to do based on what I've heard. Financially, he knows he's set right now. He's working to raise money for his foundation to keep that funded throughout the rest of the time that he wants to be active in that. And I really respect that. I think it's a great thing. I know some fans say, but it's not in Seattle. I don't care. It's where he's from. And I think it's a great thing. I think he does a lot of good in Oakland, and I have a ton of admiration for that. What it comes down to is he realizes this next season he's probably going to be getting fewer carries than he's got. Could impact his stats. And next year or the year after, going into negotiations with another club, hanging around that 29, 30-year-old range, they're going to automatically assume that his production's down because of his age, whether that's the case or not. So he's trying to set himself up to maximize his income over the next few years, and I respect that. Flip side is, get your butt to work. He agreed on that contract 2 years ago. He's still one of the highest 5 or 6 paid running backs in the NFL. There's several of them right in that range where he's at. So I think his best approach is to show up and play out this year of his contract. So I just don't see Seattle caving as the biggest issue. Whether they need him or not, I think most of us saw that Terry Blunt article today. I'm not going to go so far as to say his stats mean a lot, because in those games there wasn't rushing for much. They were putting 8, 9 guys in the box, and it opened up the passing game for Seattle. So his presence is felt even if he doesn't have the rushing yards. So I know all of us would feel a lot better with him in camp versus trusting that C-Mike is ready or Turbin's ready to take over the number one responsibilities.
You know, they talked a little bit today on that ESPN live look-in, live show, I guess you can call it, from camp. And, the APYs, average per year, technically, is higher than Jamal Charles when you break into the upfront money he got in this contract. So from an economic standpoint, he's really still in the top three from a top-paid look. But when you look at this whole situation, personally, I see both sides, and I agree with both sides. Like you said, I respect what Marshawn's trying to do, but at the same time, ultimately, you've got to look at the fact that the organization has a plan, and I think John Schneider has said it very well, which is, they've done their projections out, 2-3 years, and how they're going to be able to manage the cap and manage players, and without saying, anything negative about Marshawn in any way, shape, or form, because I don't think anyone has anything negative to say about Marshawn, really. It's just, we want you here. We know you make a difference. You'll add something to this, and it's special. You've been part of building this up in the first place. How do you think the team prepares? Well, we all know who they have there to play with, but do you think this team is prepared fully to move on from Lynch?
I don't think they're fully prepared, and I don't think it'll get to that. At some point, he's going to show up and get to work. And right now, this may seem odd, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Turbin's getting reps. Michael's getting reps. Yep. We're going to allow Ware to get some more work in and find out, okay, we've got these three guys, and then we've got a few guys at fullback that the team needs to figure out what to do there. This roster is going to be tricky on offense. How do they break up those 25 or so offensive spots, and do they carry 3 or 4 or 5 at the running back position so they can maybe keep a guy like Pryor at quarterback or maybe keep a 10th offensive lineman? So having Lynch out I don't think hurts the team, and in some odd ways it gives them the luxury of getting some more looks at these running backs to make better decisions when it comes to those positions. Can Seattle go on and repeat without Marshawn? Sure. If there might be one player on this roster that they can't repeat without, but I don't think Lynch is it. Everything Pete and John have done in the draft has been about depth and competition, including the running back position, in case something terrible should happen to him. I think they're prepared to play a season without him. But he's that force, that threat back there that makes a team like New Orleans on Monday night put 8 or 9 guys in the box so Russell Wilson can throw for 320 yards. So you just can't discount what he brings from a fear factor with opposing defensive coordinators. Apologies to Kevin Vickerson for using fear. I know he'll take offense to that.
I actually got a good feeling from today's practice how a lot of the players felt about this. I know Doug Baldwin said some things a few days ago that were pretty clear that he's on Marshawn's side. And then today you saw some of the players, Michael Bennett, a lot of the defensive line guys coming up and saying, we want you back, get back here, Marshawn. And it was just kind of a side cut as they were going to a commercial. But still, It's evident these guys want him back. Do you still think they're the favorite to win it all, even if Marshawn doesn't play with them?
Oh, well, were they the favorite to begin with? I mean, we all know teams can't repeat anymore, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't happened in 10 years, so it can't happen again. Even without Sean, they're still the best team on paper. Granted, they have a tough schedule and they have to play the games, but they're still the best team on paper in the NFL. Their defense will be even better. Their skill positions at wide receiver, oh my goodness, we'll get to that later. But yeah, they should still be the favorites to win it all. And I saw Doug's comments, and I appreciate them. I think my flip side to that is, yes, he can be cut, but that's why players negotiate in guaranteed dollars. And that's what their guarantee is, and that's the team's leverage. If you're doing well and if things still fit, then great. But we also see players get a final year thrown into their deal at an obscene amount of money just to bump up their average per year, knowing they're never going to get it. So, negotiate that contract. When you can be released and not have anything else owed to you. That's why the players ask for the money up front. And Marshawn got that $6 million signing bonus and earned $10 million his first year under this contract. So, that's got to be taken into consideration. You just can't look at his current salary.
Yeah, I think the bad guy, to wrap up this Marshawn Lynch conversation, I think the bad guy really, unfortunately for Marshawn, is the Players Association. They signed the CBA that really created the scenario that he's been put into. I think with the young running back, I think running backs of all positions they've been completely screwed with the new CBA. As we know, it's you're pretty much done at the age of 29 on average, 28, and you're stuck in a 4 to 5 year deal depending on where you're drafted before you can re-up. So you maybe only have one chance at getting really paid in the NFL as a running back, and that's if you stay healthy. So I think it's nobody's fault but the CBA for doing what not CBA but for the Players Association for negotiating what they did, and unfortunately Marshawn's position group, and as good as Marshawn is, they're the ones that got screwed in this whole thing, and it's nobody's fault but theirs.
Yep.
Let's move on to I called it the new guys, old friends, and retired souls. And I just want to start. Let's start with the retired souls, and we know who one of those is. Sidney Rice walked away from the NFL at the age of 27. I'd love to get your thoughts on Sidney walking away, retiring, and not even coming to camp and giving himself a shot to make this team.
Well, I wish Sid the best. He was a good competitor when healthy. He's one of the most physically gifted receivers the Seahawks have ever had. Seeing him out on the game field and in practices especially, you could just see there was something special about the guy, but, health was an issue. I don't know how much of his concern about making this roster played into his decision. I don't think it's beyond reason that he looked at this and says, it's going to be tough for me to make this roster on a 1-year contract. The only way he stays is if he's the number 2 guy behind Percy Harvin. So could he beat out Baldwin? Could he beat out Kurse? Because if not, Seattle's going to keep one of the younger guys as opposed to sticking with Sidney. So, it's tough when you've been a Pro Bowl player to end up being cut from a roster. So I wish him the best. I hope he's got something, great plan for his next step in his career. But I think it was a good decision for him to walk. He's made his money. From what I hear, he's been responsible with it, so he's not going to have financial concerns in 5 years. Walk now while your brain is still intact and you can still walk.
I thought it was interesting. He used that as one of his kind of reasons, the thought of the concussions. And you think back to that Chicago Bear game where, in overtime, rookie season, Russell hit him for that touchdown, and he caught it, but he was knocked absolutely out cold. And I personally have had a concussion from playing football in college, and mine I suffered in high school, believe it or not. But, it makes you think that, these head injuries, and they're real, and you got to be aware of it. So guys retiring early, I get it. And Sidney, hey, look, the fact is Sidney's got the Wingstop franchises he owns up here. They've been doing very well. I love wings. So, heck, that's a good reason to have them. I agree with you. I wish the best for Sidney going forward. This team lost some important pieces. Even though we returned 17 out of 22 starters, the 2013 campaign, obviously some big names, Red Bryant, Chris Clemens, Breno Giacomini, and I think Walter Thurman is kind of a big part of that because that nickel, having that slot corner right there, and I think he was the best in the game, personally speaking. Do you see this as a non-issue going into 2014, that these are replaceable parts, or do you think that, and also when I say that, do you think the red shirts can fill the holes or some of these drafted rookies, or on the flip side, have we maybe bit off more than we can chew?
You think back to when Pete and John got here, and you talked about players of their caliber, and they'd be cornerstones of the team. But right now, I don't think there's one of those four that they're really going to have that hard of a time replacing. Walter Thurman in the slot, we'll see if Terrell Thomas can step up. I'm not sure he's quite acclimated to Seattle's practices yet. based on what I've seen on film. We'll see if he can ramp that up. But we've got Lane in there. They've got a couple of young guys in Deshaun Shedd and Thurald Simon I'm excited about as anything that I will compete to fill Walter's shoes as well. So when you think about it, we survived stretches of last season with him and his injury issues early on. So I don't think we're going to miss Walter. Breno was tough to lose. A lot of people mention the penalties, but most of them don't realize he only had 8 enforced penalties last season. He cut way down. He caused more penalty yardage than what he had marked off against him. So, I think he'll be missed, but I feel a lot better about that today with bringing Eric Winston on board. At least they have some depth and some options there. Justin Britt has looked great. He's getting some good work in right now. So, I think most of the red flags are being raised by some of the national pundits that, quite frankly, don't have the time to keep up on every franchise and really don't know who Seattle has waiting in their wings. I doubt many of them have ever heard of some of the guys we've just mentioned. So maybe I'm minimizing it too much, but you've got talent waiting to take over. You lose Chris Clemens, but you've got Michael Bennett coming back, and you've got Cliff Averlin there, and you've got 3 other defensive ends of a similar mold that are fighting for a roster spot. So, John clearly knows what he's doing with his dollars for the team and with the talent. So I don't think they would have let those guys walk if they couldn't win without him.
And I think even at camp so far, Michael Bailey hasn't played yet. Russell Okung, they don't expect back for another week or so. The O-line is, I don't want to say unhealthy. It's getting healthy, but some of these guys we're talking about, and rookies or young guys that have, I think, a tremendous amount of talent are really kind of getting the short change, having to go up against the best of the best in these practices. And that's good at the same time for them, because hopefully they're learning from it. And I think, like you said, Eric Winston coming in is a great rock to kind of baseline, I think, for the young guys to not only learn from, but learn how to practice against these great players, because the defense looks just ridiculous, outstanding. The offense, and especially some of that right tackle area, Justin Britt, pass blocking has been the problem. Not run blocking, pass blocking.
Right.
Some of the red shirts. Let's talk a little bit more in detail in the rookies. I think they're getting, I talked about here, significant time to play out there. Justin Britt being one of them. Gary Gilliam, who I'm very high on, an undrafted free agent out of Penn State. Cassius Marsh has looked outstanding. Also, obviously, Christine Michael and Robert Turbin have been getting all the time with Marshawn out. Greg Scruggs, Thurald Simon, again, some of the names we've already mentioned. Who do you think is taking these opportunities and shining the most?
Well, I think Paul Richardson's the low-hanging fruit there. When you've got guys calling him a Percy Harvin clone, it's not hard to get excited about him as a Seahawks fan. So ignoring him for the moment just because he's too easy, I'd have to go with Cassius Marsh. He was a guy that I was looking at. I thought he'd be a day 2 pick in the draft. He just has such a good combination of athleticism and speed and decent size for Seattle's system. I think a lot of teams saw him as being too small for a 4-3 defensive end, but it'll work well in Seattle. So I'm really excited, and I think you mentioned he's really been shining so far in training camp. He's getting some reps in, not going against the best offensive tackles the Seahawks have to offer yet, and he's making hay with that. So he's really making a stance that, hey, there's only a few roster spots open at defensive end, and dang it, I'm going to take one of them. So, you love guys that come in on fire like that. So, and as far as Richardson, I just can't wait to see him and Harvin out there on opposite sides of the field. I just don't know how his secondary can cover both those players. Legion of Boom has been struggling with that a little bit so far as well. So, but yeah, Scruggs is another one. Him and Marsh both have some great versatility. We'll get back to Scruggs here in a minute, but he's definitely showing why Seattle has just been in love with this guy since he first walked into camp. And I mentioned Thurald Simon earlier. He's looked good in drills and practices. The coaching staff is really high on him. as well as Deshaun Shedd. I think Shedd will get most of his looks on special teams this year unless something opens up. I never want to mention the injury word, but if something opens up, he'll be ready to step into it. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Shedd possibly taking on some of the punt and kickoff return duties. None of us want to see Earl Thomas out there for that on the punt side. So Shedd's a guy that might be able to step in and cover some of that. And I mentioned in the off season, raised some eyebrows, but Simon's a guy I think can really challenge Maxwell for starting duties at cornerback. He's got some work to do, definitely, but he's got that type of talent that take this year and learn and grow, and next year can step into that role.
I think what's unbelievable and what Pete and John have been able to do is that they've been able to get these guys to buy into the culture, and they benefit so much more from buying into the culture and letting the culture dictate how they do everything around them. And Harold Simon's a guy that I think once he bought into the culture, I'm not sure how long it took, you can see how much he's growing. You're seeing it with no-name guys, and that kind of moves us on to the wide receiver conversation. Phil Bates has looked unbelievable so far. And have you seen how big he is? I mean, he looks big. And his speed, I mean, this is a guy that I had on my paper as I really didn't think I had a chance to make this team. And now I'm sitting here going, I don't know who's going to make this team from a wide receiver standpoint. Just your thoughts on these wide receivers, this group of wide receivers that now I think is just outstanding.
Well, I think one of the biggest changes with the wide receivers is just time. It takes time to build a roster, and I don't want to throw dirt on where the Seahawks were 4 or 5 years ago, but they had a lot of aging players, and a lot of the talent had just been diminished under a certain former administration. But they needed time. Trying to be somewhat politically correct here, but let's be honest, the talent has really dropped. And it takes time to rebuild that. They focused on defense. Pete Carroll's a defensive guy, and obviously defense still wins championships. He proved that. The other thing they focused on was the running game. Get the running back you want, try to get the type of blockers in camp that you want. Then there was get the quarterback you need, and now it seems like they've finally gotten around to really focusing on wide receivers. They had dabbled with it a little bit, drafting Golden Tate. Chris Durham was the guy they took a shot on that didn't quite stick. But it seems like they've finally gotten around to building the wide receiver pool, and my goodness, I just don't know how you can whittle that unit down to 6 this year. So it's going to be exciting.
I mean, you got Percy, who's just like I think everyone has said, just looks like a god out there. I mean, he runs past the best secondary in all of football, and nobody's been able to stop him. He had a touchdown today. He ran past Earl Thomas. It was a fantastic catch, and really he was on top of him. Earl was, but he scored. That was the deal. But then you've got, again, you've mentioned Richardson, who's looked outstanding from a speed standpoint, and also he had a drop today they talked about, but at the same time he scored some touchdowns.
Exactly.
Baldwin, Curse, Bates, I mentioned.
Yep.
And then you start talking about, well, what happens to Kevin Norwood, who everyone has said has looked outstanding. And, he's out right now. I think he's going to be back tomorrow, they said. But, I mean, just, again, how do you whittle this down? And, I don't want to say who makes this team, but just some of your thoughts on some of these other guys.
Well, I think we're really on the same page there with the names. The big four, as close to locks as exist in Seattle, with Harvin, Baldwin, Curse, and Richardson. So the way I'm looking at it, you've got Lockett, Bates, Norwood, and Chris Matthews as the main competitors for those final 2 spots. Brian Walters has an outside chance. He's got some experience in the league. I won't give him a ton of attention right now, but it gets really difficult. If Norwood continues to do what he's done, he's probably going to make this team. He's a rookie. They've got the 4 years to develop him. So Lockett and Bates competing for the 6th spot. Which way do you go? Bates is a guy that Seattle clearly likes. They've kept him. They've worked on transitioning him from being a passer to a catcher, and it's worked. So
Well, I think they're going to keep Lockett as a special teams guy. That's what I think. I think they're going to keep 7, and I think they're going to keep Lockett as that special teams, one of 3 guy kind of keepers you got to keep on special teams. So I actually think they're going to keep 7 as opposed to 6.
That could be. If they want to run with just 4 running backs and including a fullback in there, that'll depend on what Marshawn decides to do as well. So it's going to be that's my top position group in training camp to watch is the receivers, because it's going to be so fluid. So and there's a few other guys we haven't even talked about yet, but the ones we've covered are all have the talent to make an NFL roster. So
right.
So interesting.
We've got now Darrell Bevell, who happens to have his foot in a boot right now, which is kind of interesting, but had microfracture surgery apparently. What do you think he's going to do with this offense? I think he's a guy that actually does innovate. I think he tries to do different formations, and I think that's a good thing, especially when now you've got these weapons. I mean, I'm just looking for. I picture a Norwood. I picture a Richardson, Harvin, somehow maybe even getting a Christine Michael in there, and then having obviously Marshawn and Russell and the rest of the gang. I just see stretching a field very hard to really focus in on one area like most teams tried to do last year, which is try to stop our running attack. What do you think? How do you think Darrell Bevell's going to encompass some of these weapons now into the attack?
Well, I think he actually hurt himself by jumping up for joy and kicking his heels together with the weapons he's got at his disposal this year. But I do expect to see a little more passing this year. Whether Lynch comes back tomorrow, next week, or decides to stay out for a while, I definitely think they're going to let Wilson toss the ball around a little bit more, keep the defenses honest, and if they do try to crowd the box, they've got the tools to eat them alive. We're going to see Harvin lined up everywhere on the field. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to be lined up. I think we'll see him a little bit kind of set back in the backfield just to keep teams guessing what they're going to do with him. And that's probably one of the things I'm most excited for this year, is just to see how they utilize him over a 16-game schedule. So you put his speed on one side, to put Richardson's speed on the other side. You can throw Luke Wilson out there as a tight end that can get open downfield. You've got Baldwin and Kearse at your disposal to maybe hit some underneath routes, or both of them have the capability to get downfield. It's going to be exciting. A lot of it will come down to how the offensive line comes together. If that line is able to gel and people get healthy. Can you believe we're talking about health of the offensive line again? I don't think we've talked about a healthy offensive line since 2005. But, if they can gel and come together and give Russell Wilson some time to sit back, Bevell can throw out pretty much any formation and scheme he wants and find success with it. I know there's been some criticism of Bevell from some of the fan base. I'm not above that either, especially at the end of last season. I think things got really stale. I think they took every running play for Wilson and tucked it away for good measure, and really closed down about a third of the playbook over the last month or so of the season to keep guys healthy and keep some things under the hat for the playoffs. But with the talent they have, they really have the ability to do some great things this season on offense.
And some in a position group, which I want to talk about next, is the tight ends. Luke Wilson has looked outstanding. I mean, really, not only from his pass-catching abilities, but also to his blocking. He's really improved based on everything I've read and heard about. Zach Miller is Zach Miller. He's just outstanding as a blocker and does as good as a receiver. Losing Anthony McCoy was one I really hated to see. But a name that, and again, I don't know if you've looked into, but the guy that I've been following actually pretty closely is Rashawn Allen. He's a guy out of Southern University they picked up, undrafted guy that supposedly is like an Eric Ebron, just an absolute athletic freak, speed, size, the whole thing, but he's very raw. How do you see the loss of McCoy affecting this tight end group? And two, are we going to still be okay with Luke Wilson's development and maybe a possible Rashawn Allen coming out of nowhere?
Yeah, I'm an Anthony McCoy fan. We've seen him make some big plays over the years, but he has missed a little bit of time, and feel terrible for the guy. Excited to get another shot to come back and prove what he can do, and to lose him again, just and I know how much that stings as a player and as a fan. So I saw him primarily as if you're going to go with a 2 tight end system in a running situation, that's where McCoy likely would have gotten a fair amount of his work. But as you mentioned, Luke Wilson, things are clicking right now, and they can bring him in with Miller. Cooper Helfett, he made a couple good plays today. He's a pretty talented guy, so he could make it. We'll see if Rashawn can continue to develop. I think he's got some steps to take, and he may be a guy they think they can move on to the practice squad. You're talking about maybe keeping 7 wide receivers. What might have to give is one of the tight end positions. Start the season with 2 tight ends. Try to get Allen onto the practice squad and have him there in case something does happen with one of your other players. So, but yeah, if you run out there with Wilson and Miller, they can do almost everything you'd ask of your tight end. So, neither one of them are going to, catch 90 balls and 15 touchdowns in a season very often, but Seattle doesn't quite look for that from their tight ends. They get open down the middle. They can provide the protection on pass games.
Well, at least they're 2 guys that not only they can do the same thing, but I think Luke is that explosive tight end now, where we kind of thought Anthony McCoy was going to be that guy. Luke has really grown into that role, but also now he can be in there and block. So that's fantastic. That's good knowing that we've got guys that can do it from both sides of the ball with a double tight end set. Let's get over to the defensive side.
Nobody's happier about that than Russell Wilson right now. So I think he's looking forward to have those guys as outlet receivers.
That's the first time we brought up really Russell Wilson, and I mean, to think we don't even worry about him, and I love that. So let's talk defense for a second, and I call it the new look defensive line because we obviously lost Red and Clem, and one of my favorite players, Clinton McDonald, the truck driver. We all know the names, right? We all know the names of the guys that who've moved on, and now we're anticipating, what are we going to be seeing out there from the run stopping front 4 to the pass rushing front 4, because they do rotate so much. That's Pete's mantra. These guys are not going to see the snap. They're going to see 50 to 60% of the snaps they'd normally see with another team. And that, I think, is a very positive thing. It makes them fresh for the playoffs, and we saw what happened when they played the Broncos. Just give me kind of your initial thoughts to this group and how they look so far.
Yeah, you mentioned the rotation. That is one thing that won't be changing as much as will be new. Dan Quinn's just going to have a field day moving guys around to throw different looks at offensive lines, keeping players fresh. When you've got a guy like Kevin Williams, I love that pick. That was a great pickup. He's one of the guys I was salivating almost as much as Jared Allen. I was salivating over Kevin Williams because he's that kind of just big, nasty defensive tackle that we haven't quite had. Not to take anything away from the guys we have, and I think Brandon Meebane's one of the most underrated 4-3 defensive tackles in the game. But Kevin Williams is a different type of player. He's going to block up the middle and the run. He can still, for a big guy, he can still get after the quarterback. If memory serves, he sacked Robert Griffin twice last year. So, he's a guy that can bring down one of the quicker quarterbacks in the game. So, but I look at them starting off. I think Greg Scruggs will probably be the replacement for Red Bryant. He's got the size and he's got good speed. He can close that edge down. Throw Meebane in next to him, and you've got Kevin Williams and then Michael Bennett on the other side for your initial looks, and then your running, quote unquote, running situations. And I don't see where they lose anything from last season. You still have Tony to come in as well for rushing and passing attacks. But where it really gets fun is in passing situations when they go to their big nickel. They've got so many options. Greg Scruggs can either come off the field for Cliff Averill, or he can move down and kick me, Bain, or Williams to the side for a play or two, and Scruggs can be that defensive tackle. Michael Bennett can do the exact same thing. And that's when to see a guy like Cassius Marsh step into the defensive end rotation. I wouldn't even be surprised if we see Bruce Irvin spend some time back at defensive end this year and, rushing situations. Third and long, put Irvin out there and let him try to chase down a quarterback. So, it's
it's exciting.
It's just fun. It's just fun to look at that talent and imagine what Bevel can do with it. Dan Quinn can do with it. Old habits.
And we haven't even brought up Benson Mayala. We haven't talked about Jesse Williams, who apparently both have looked pretty good, right? It's going to be interesting how, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but who makes this team? Who makes this roster? Because there are going to be potentially starters that get cut that start on some other team. I really see that. But
exactly.
We'll move past that just for a second. I want to talk about these dark horses, okay? And, there are undrafted players that, for whatever reason, Schneid, as I call him, John Schneider, and Pete Carroll find out of nowhere that not only make the team but actually play. They're impact players. Benson Mayala is kind of one of those guys. Obviously, we all know Doug Baldwin. We know these other names. Are there any, undrafted guys this year that you think can make this team?
Well, I'm with you on being excited about Gilliam and what he's able to do.
Yep.
He's got some work to do to make this roster, especially with the addition of Eric Winston today. But he's a guy that can really grow. Look at what they did with Sweezy on his conversion. So Cable can develop talent. I think Gilliam's a guy that can really shine. I mentioned Deshaun Shedd earlier. I know he's not a player from this year. He's one of our red shirts and an undrafted guy from last year. But I just love this kid. He's got so much talent, and the versatility is what will really help him. He can be a star in special teams. He can play, any of the 5 secondary positions at nickel or corner or either one of the safety spots. So, he's a guy that can really step up and make a name for himself. And we'll see what's going to happen at tight end. So, that's another option where Allen may be able to make this team and have a bit of an impact as well. So, I hate to say it because it's not completely fair, but with the talent on this roster, it's going to be harder for some of these undrafted guys to make the team and have the opportunities that guys like Baldwin did. But there are a few of them that are just too good that fell through the cracks. Jackson Jeffcoat, how he went undrafted still baffles me, and how he can possibly not make this roster is also baffling because he's such a promising young player. So,
yeah.
You think about a guy like that not making the roster 2 years ago. It's crazy.
I think the only player that really has not shined from a draft standpoint is Jimmy Staten. They've said that he just hasn't really either come into camp and ready to go or whatever. Yeah. But I'll tell you, I agree. Gary Gilliam is the guy. I think Gary Gilliam. I actually expect them to maybe move him over to the right side once Okung comes back, and they leave Bailey and Okung over on that other left side, and then maybe because I did see that in practice today. They did bring Gilliam over to the right side for a couple of reps on pass protection, and with Winston, Britt, and then now Gilliam. I expect Gilliam to make this team now. I really do. And again, we'll see what happens in the preseason and the games. All these guys are going to be playing a lot, but he's kind of my big dark horse now because he's a guy that was a tight end in college at Penn State. A lot of people don't even know that. He played tight end his whole career until his senior year, and he holds some Big Ten record for, I think, catches in a season. So, just again, where do they find this talent? It's just amazing. All right, let's move on. Let's get to roster predictions. And I know we weren't going to go really literally by the whole roster. I just wanted to kind of break it into the position groups that we're kind of really keying on. And let's just start with offensive line. Right now, who do you expect this team to keep for offensive line?
It'll be interesting to see if they keep 9 or 10 this year. I expect it to be 9. Last year they started at 10, but they only had 5 receivers and often run with 4 running backs for part of the season. So we'll see. But obviously Unger and Jean-Pierre will be the centers, and Jean-Pierre can provide depth at guard. Carpenter and Sweezy, I think, are locks for that roster, provided both are healthy. Greg Van Rotten's a guy I'd love to see take down that third roster spot. I'm not sure if it's his talent or just the name that I like so much, but he's a fun guy to watch. And Alvin Bailey's the guy you just mentioned. I think he has a good shot at making this roster because of the versatility he offers. He can step inside and play guard or move outside and play either tackle position. So at tackle, we've got Okung, obviously, Justin Britt, and I think Eric Winston makes the roster. Michael Bowie, clearly one of the guys that they're counting on contributing. So that gets down to where does Gilliam fit in, and to me it comes down, I think, to maybe Bailey and Gilliam. I wouldn't be surprised if they give Gilliam some shots inside to see if he might be able to clamp down and handle some duties at guard should depth be needed there. So it's going to be fun watching them trim down their roster. But it's going to hurt, but they've got some talent there to work with. So, and a lot of it's going to depend if some of these guys that are banged up can't get in and start competing. Then guys like Britt and Gilliam will really start to separate themselves.
And I don't know if you saw the piece from Hawk Blogger yesterday, but actually I think it might have been today. He brought out that he thinks Tom Cable has kind of a blind spot, and his blind spot is that when he sees great running, rushing, blocking linemen, it's like he starts to salivate and he forgets about their ability to pass block. And it's kind of evident when you think about last year when they were literally rotating players on the offensive line in and out, depending on situations. It's not like, hey, I know what they're going to do now. They're going to run the ball, or I know what they're going to do now. They're going to pass. I played college football. I played offensive center, so I get it. But you did see them do a lot better. Maybe that is a problem Tom Cable has, but my God, I do hope, and I actually like the fact that they're getting the opportunity to get these reps against such an incredible defense right now, because I think it's only going to allow them to grow faster. Because you think about these other camps, they're not getting reps. The players like that in that position, they're not getting reps like that. So I actually look at it as a positive thing. And again, it's camp. It's where they need to learn. Let's move on to wide receivers. Again, we did talk about wide receivers at length, and we were kind of trying to figure out who makes this team. But I think the tight end, I think you're right. I think we're probably going to only start with 2 tight ends with the Anthony McCoy issue. And now, where do you go to these receivers? So who are the receivers ultimately you think we're going to keep?
At this point, I think they'll keep 6. If they keep the 7th, I think it ends up being Lockett. But to me, Harvin, Baldwin, Kirsten Richardson are the locks. I think you keep Kevin Norwood just because he's got the promise as a rookie. He's on that favorable contract. And I'm surprised I'm saying it, but I just love what Phil Bates is doing out there. He's the guy that's grown a lot, and he keeps improving, and he's the kind of gritty competitor that the team loves. So, and that means you lose a guy like Chris
Matthews. And he's a favorite in the room. The position group loves him.
Yeah. He brings all those intangibles that you love, and what is he, 6'2" and 220 pounds or something close to that, and good speed and decent hands, and he's really learned how to run a nice route. He's played quarterback, so he knows what's happening on that end as well. So he's just a nice all-around player.
Well, let's skip over to the D-line, and this is as deep a unit I think I've ever seen. I think we're clearly going to be better this year than we were last year on the defensive line, and that's saying a lot. So, with that being said, who are the guys you like on the D-line?
Yeah, well, it's amazing that you can improve when you lose a guy like Red Bryant and like Chris Clemens, but I think that's exactly what they've done. Again, defensive line, I'm expecting them to keep 9 players just so they can keep a full secondary and a good linebacker crew. Mebane is going to be there. Michael Bennett's going to be there. Cliff Averill, a guy we haven't really talked about, is going to be there, but we all know what he can do. Back to the defensive tackle, you've got Tony McDaniel, who brings a lot to this club. He can cover the ground. He can rush the quarterback if needed. And then the 2 Williams, Kevin and Jesse, will both be there. That leaves us the 4 spots at defensive end with Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, and I'm saying Greggs and Cassius Marsh are there. So, which means, you've got a guy like Jeff Coate that maybe can get him to the practice squad, and that means saying goodbye to a guy like Mayoa. So, it's just crazy. Maybe you can try to get a trade worked out for one of those guys, but maybe Darrell Bevel wants another defensive end, and he'll be interested in Mayoa, or ship him off to the Jets or something. But
I really don't understand why the NFL has not expanded rosters. I mean, this is a totally separate subject, but 57. Right now they're at 53, and I think it's game day 45, something like that. Right. So it just, I don't understand why they limit these rosters, especially with. And I'm not saying like we go crazy here. I'm just saying 57. Add a couple of roster spots for eligible players. So. Anyways, all right, let's move on. Defensive secondary, we all know the LOB, but I think there's some other guys at the back of this position group that are names that I don't think might make this team.
Well, yeah, they've added a couple guys this offseason, and Terrell Thomas and Phillip Adams, and one of those two is likely going to make the roster, but one of them's going to be left off, and I think the guy that's on the outside looking in right now is probably Phillip Adams. He and Thomas will challenge for that final spot and for nickel duties. I think Lane's going to maintain that spot, but you've got Shedd's going to be competing for that, and Thurald Simon will be there as well. So, Jerron Johnson, he's a guy that I've liked since his days at Boise State. One of the things about that draft that really irritated me was that Seattle took a chance on a couple of guys and left Jerron Johnson hanging out there. And when they were able to bring him in as an undrafted free agent, I was very happy with that. I think he's just a good, solid, tough guy that can bring a lot to that secondary. So I don't think we'll see too many surprises in there, but
there's 2 names that I think we should bring up. One is A.J. Jefferson. And then the other one is Deion Bailey, that undrafted free agent out of USC that has apparently looked pretty darn good. Some people think he can make this team as Earl's backup at the free safety position. Any thoughts that either of those 2 guys might make this ball club?
Well, Deion Bailey's a guy that has good speed and good instincts. We'll see. He's to me is another guy kind of like Shedd. He's got decent size, good speed that can cover a lot of ground. So he's also a guy though that I think they can release and sign to the practice squad, and not have a lot of fear of losing him. Unless he just really fires in camp and in some preseason games. If he really fires, then that'll become a little more difficult. So.
Yeah, no kidding.
We've seen. So,
anything on A.J. Jefferson?
You know what? I just haven't had enough of a chance to really watch him play yet, so I'm not sure what you've seen in camp.
Well, he's the guy out of the Vikings. He's a very special talent, very athletic, and it's really just about him being able to fit into the system. He's a big guy. Phillip Adams has actually looked pretty good, and based on what I've seen. But I think there is going to be a fight for that last spot, and I think it's going to come back to those 3 guys: Phillip, Adams, A.J. Jefferson, and Deion Bailey, ultimately. But I think flexibility and where they can play, like you said, is probably going to rule the day. I think versatility, a guy like Deshaun Sheed who can go and play both sides of any side of the field, and also in the middle. So, I think there's potential in what happens there. But anyways, we've come to the end of our time, my friend. So I'm almost at 8:30. I got Oh no, we've been fantastic. This has been fantastic. I think anybody who listens to this show, there's the entertaining side I try to throw out there, some laughing, some joking, but there's also the raw facts and numbers. I always love talking to people like yourself, Darin, because we get to really get into the nitty gritty and do hopefully some good analysis. But I really appreciate you coming on. And before you go, if you would be so kind, please share with everybody the websites and also the social sites. You're great on Facebook. I think you're the Hawks Fans Forum is where I can find you most of the time, when other people can find you. But just where are some great places that the 12s out there can talk to you?
Well, yeah, Facebook, Darin Pike, also under D-Hawk on there. You can look me up and find me. On Twitter, at Darin Pike. It's DarinPike. You can follow me there. I'm a little more active on Facebook. You mentioned the Hawk Fans group. There's also a group called the Barbershop, which some people know about and some people don't, but it's put together with a lot of former collegiate and pro athletes. True is one of the founders on there. That's a great group if you want to look for that on Facebook. And then the website, fanjabs.com/12th Man Musings is the main Seahawks page, but go to fanjabs.com and you'll find me a lot more active on that now that the season's getting back underway. So looking forward to this repeat and watching what this team can do this year. So lots to talk about all season, I'm sure.
It's still so early, but we've got so much more to look forward to.
Darin, exciting.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. We'll do this again sometime, and get better, be well and rest it up. You're going to have your vocal cords ready. We got a big season ahead of us.
We do. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy it.
All right. Take care, Darin. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
All right, that is the show for this evening, so let me go ahead and just give my quick shout-outs again to Eric Keith of ONE, the number one ONE group, and Darin Pike from Fan Jabs and 12th Man Musings. Again, fantastic work this evening, guys. I really appreciate it. I'll post all of your information on my website under this show archive, so again, people can find you very easily. Thanks again to all the listeners. Again, all those listening on demand. There's obviously a number of you that do that. I really appreciate that. But those that listen to live, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. I'm doing everything for you and trying to make you as educated as possible when it comes to this group, this team, and this love we have for the Seahawks. Now, training camp is here, as we know. There's 37 days now between now and opening day, 9/4, September 4th. We got the Broncos in Mile High for the first preseason game in 9 days, 9 short days. It's next Thursday. Bring it on, Kevin Vickers. Check out the past shows, again, all of them on the website, 12for12s.com. That's 12FOR, 12S.com, 12for12s. And you'll find all of the archives, past shows. We now are on number 42. Believe it or not, it's amazing. And thanks again to Tim Gardner and OOT Radio for having me as part of their little empire. Check out, again, the other shows in that group. I'm going to say last week, the Build the Tip show with Chris Bauer and Joe Michaels. Also, the bonus interview with Jason Coyner about the success of getting the Legion of Boom inside the game of Madden, which I think was a huge score. And Jason was the one that led that movement, along with Build the Tip. Guys, I just can't tell enough good things about Chris and Joe. I talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the show, but thank you to both of them and having me involved in their great initiative. Sean Boyle from Discovery's American Muscle, Megan Granito from NFL Female, and Jamie Nicole, Football Girl, our favorite. She has all been on those past shows, so do check them out. Tim Weaver was on last week. I think we had a great discussion. Check that out. For all who may be listening and supporting our shows, I can't tell you enough, but please, please, please like, retweet, share, favorite, all that neat stuff on Twitter, Facebook. Again, I appreciate everybody that's doing that. Google Plus, if you're on there. You can find me at 12for12s. Thanks to Phoebes, Rachel, Joseph, Tina, all the retweets, all the work the OOT overtime team, that is, does in their promotional assistance. I really appreciated all of you, Tim, and, of course, obviously, Barry. Shout out to the fellas in Texas at the Subways who listen to our show, my show, every week while they're eating lunch on TuneIn Radio. Remember, to get all the latest from myself and everything I do from day-to-day basis, which has been quite busy of late, 12for12s.com, my Twitter, @PBizzle. Also on Twitter now is @12for12sradio. So, yes, the show has its own Twitter. Do start to follow me there. As I build up, I'll start sending stuff out just from the radio show as well. For my personal account. Facebook, you obviously know where to find me, Paul Beyer, but also you can find 12for12's radio page. Please do and like it. And obviously Google, as I mentioned before. I'm sending out 3 to 4 updates a day, typically on all of the different social media avenues. So please check that out and be aware. You can always come back and just check my timeline. I'm sending that stuff out for you guys. Lastly, again, you know where to find the show. Find the show on, obviously, Blog Talk Radio Live. You can listen to it in archive. But for your assistance and making things easier on you, iTunes, Stitcher, Xbox Music, and Zune, as well as TuneIn Radio. All great places and easy places for you to download the podcast and listen to it. Tune in to Double Overtime tomorrow. Tim, Barry, and myself, we're going to have a lot of talk, especially about the Mariners and Jack Z. What's going on with the trade situation, and does Jack Z have a problem with trading with people and playing nicely, I guess, in the majors? That's going to be something to talk about. They already have won this evening against Cleveland in a pretty good, solid game. So, again, nice to see them back on the winning track. But other than that, it's time to wrap up this show. It's been a great one. Again, I can't thank Eric and Darin enough. But we are going to sign off. This is 12 for 12's radio. This is your host, Paul Beyer. And as I always do, up the irons time, folks. It is Iron Maiden at its best. And I'm going to go ahead and just play a little Wasted Years. Good night. See you next week. Thanks again, everybody who listened to the show or has listened to the show on demand. I really appreciate it. Again, this is Paul Beyer and 12 Patrols Radio signing off for July 29th. Here we come, August, and here we come, preseason football. Till next week, have a wonderful rest of your week, and go Hawks.